All right, guys, this is the start of next week. We're in the expressions series now. The first video is order of operations, which is not really technically part of expressions, but that's the theme of this week is expressions. And we're starting with order of operations, so I just put it under that umbrella. And the rest of the week we'll be looking at expressions. Let's dive in. All right. PEMDAS is typically what you hear about when you talk about order of operations. There may be another acronym. I don't even remember what it is, to be honest. It's been a few years, but I'm going to go with PEMDAS. Refer to this one with this video, and let's jump in. When we talk about PEMDAS, the P is for parentheses. And I'm not sure how to spell it. I always wonder. I think those are all E's. We have E for exponents. M, multiply. D, divide. And remember, you're writing notes on this as well. If you want to be learning this stuff, you need to be writing it as well. Okay, so parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. Probably just say add. Now, there's one more important thing here. Multiplying and dividing are not done one after the other. They're a group. Adding and subtracting, also not done one after the other. They're done as a group. And we do these left to right. So in other words, as you look across the problem, any multiplying or any dividing you see, you do one after another as you work across the problem, left to right. Same thing with adding and subtracting. Any multiplying or dividing you'll see, we're going to do as we go across the problem. So this means, guys, if you see some dividing in front of multiplying in the problem, you would do that first, even though the D for divide is after the M for multiply, because they're done as a group across the problem. So we're really looking at our problem and doing any parenthesis work, and then taking care of any exponents, and then multiplying and dividing as a group, and then adding and subtracting as a group. Okay, those are the passes through the problem. Let's look. As I look at this problem here, I'm going to look for parentheses, and I start by seeing this parenthesis. But notice, there's no work inside of that parentheses, so I want to clarify to you guys. That is not the parentheses that we're talking about with the P. That is actually a multiply parenthesis. Okay, there's nothing but a 2 inside of there. So there's no work to do in the parenthesis. There's just a 2 being multiplied with the 8 next to it. Okay, so we're done with parentheses. There aren't any here. Let's go to exponents. There's none of those. So we're right at this point to the multiply divide. We've got one step of divide here, and we've got one step of multiply here. I want to point out that's not an 8. That is a negative 8 that's multiplying with the 2. That's why we waited on our order of operations till after we looked at exponents. Okay? Your 8 has the negative attached in front of it. Remember that a subtraction symbol is always also the negative sign of that number. So it's a negative 8 multiplying with 2. And because we multiply and divide from left to right, we actually start here. 28 divided by 7 is 4. Then we do this step of multiply. Negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. And now I'm just going to bring down this piece to continue keeping it as part of the problem. Just continue on with it. And now I've done my step of multiply divide. For this problem, there were no parentheses, there were no exponents. I did my multiplying and dividing. Now I'm going to do any add, subtract, and remember I'm going to go left to right. So again, the first step is here. Even though subtract is below add, I do that first because they're done together across the problem. 4 minus 16, we can think of it as 4 plus negative 16, which gives us negative 12. There were more bad guys. This is all using your integer skills, so you got to keep those in mind and keep practicing them. And here, plus negative 11. Last step of addition, bad guy and bad guy, negative 23. All right, moving on. Okay, let's compare real quick. And what I want you to notice between these two is right here. This is 3 plus the quantity in the parentheses. This is 3 right up against the parentheses. What is the difference between those two things? Okay, in the first problem, negative 2 minus 6, again, we'll rewrite that as addition. Now it's two groups of bad guy, negative 8. And 3 plus negative 8. That's an add problem, okay? That's good guys, bad guys. 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. There were more bad guys, they won the fight. Okay, that's how we do that. But on this second problem, there's no sign right here, which tells us it's not an add or subtract. The 3 isn't connecting to the parentheses with add or subtract. The 3 is actually multiplying. When there's no sign there and the value, the number, is right up against parentheses, it is multiplying with whatever's inside. So we start the same way. Negative 2 plus negative 6, negative 8. But now, this is a multiplication. 3 times negative 8. And remember, single negatives always go to the answer when you multiply. So we end up here with negative 24. Notice a very different result because it was set up from the beginning as a different problem. So make sure you notice that whenever you're working. Very often, most of the time, we're going to see this. We're going to see a number right up against parentheses. That's multiplication. It's also known as distributing, which we will see shortly later this week. All right, next step. Remember, you guys can pause to catch up. Like right now, you should be pausing, copy down these two problems, then unpause so you can watch me work them out. If I'm working them out while you're copying, you're probably not tracking with me. All right. Rewriting as you simplify, I've already been doing it on the previous problems, but I want to show you here. This is what I want you to do. This is what I will require and expect on the quizzes coming up. This is how you need to do it. I will literally give you points or not give you points based on this type of structure, okay? I want you to work downward as you go with each step of simplifying or each step of work. So we've got PEMDAS. We'll throw it over here on the side just to help us. Parentheses. I've got parentheses, but again, that's a multiply parentheses, no work inside. E for exponents, none there. So now I'm at multiplying and dividing. I'm going to go through and do any of that. There's my first step. And remember, that's a negative 7. Okay, the sign matters. This is especially where kids make a mistake when they're learning this, so watch for those. Negative 14, and I'm just going to bring everything else down. So I've got a negative 8 on the front and a plus 13 behind it. Now I'm going to go to my other step of add, subtract, and I'm just going to work across the problem. 8 plus negative 14, bad guys and bad guys, negative 22. And then plus 13. I'm running out of room to go downward, so this last step, I'll just add them together. Good guys, bad guys is a subtraction. Off the top of my head, I don't like the look of trying to do that in my head, so I'm going to write that out. 12 minus 3 is 9, so we end up with 9. More bad guys means bad guys is the sign of the answer. Okay, second one, let's do it again. Parentheses. In this one, we do have parentheses. So we're going to do the work inside. Bad guys, negative 7. Then I'm just going to rewrite everything else. Okay, E for exponent. We do have an exponent here. And just like we talked about last week in the lesson, the parenthesis is inside the exponents here, which means the parenthesis. The negative is inside the parentheses. Sorry guys, that was a mouthful. Which means I'm actually going to multiply Try that again. I'm going to multiply -7 times -7. That's what a squared negative will look like. And that's going to become 49. Okay? Now, copy everything over. I'm running out of room. Let's see if I can move this up. Yes, I can. And continue working. Okay? I've got my multiply divide, which is right here. A -3 times a 5 is -15. Bring down that 49, and a last step of add subtract. 49 minus 15, 34. Okay? So notice, number one, we're working out how to use order of operations, but we're also learning this idea of working downward as we go. One step of the problem and simplify as you go. That's how I want you guys to be doing this. It does require rewriting the problem multiple times. You do need to do that. It's how you learn. It's how you build the skills. Okay, last set of practice problems. Here we go. Sometimes you'll see this and it might look confusing. This multiple sets of parentheses going on, and you kind of go, man, what is going on here? There's nothing going on except it's called nested parentheses. They're just putting them inside each other. So just work to the inside, find the inside set of parentheses, and work your way out. Okay? So you're going to start on the inside set. So right here on the very inside is the first parentheses, 8 minus 11. We can rewrite 8 plus -11, -3. We subtract, they're canceling, and there were more bad guys. Okay? And I'm just going to rewrite what's around it, because otherwise it's going to get really tough to see what's going on. Okay, there we go. And I'll just keep going. Now I've got multiplication going on, but notice there's double parentheses. So I first have to multiply inside of that. -3 times -4, positive 12. And then just bring down this -4 that I still haven't used. And that's my final step. 12 times -4, -48. All right, last problem. Now, notice right here, this entire thing is a fraction bar, which some of you are probably running, screaming from the room over. Don't worry about it. It's really easy. All this is telling us is that everything on top is as if it's in an invisible parenthesis. It's got to be done together. Everything on the bottom is in an invisible parenthesis. They both have to be done basically as two separate problems. I could even rewrite this whole thing to look like this. If this makes more sense to you, feel free to do this. That whole top quantity divided by, because remember, we talked about this, I think, on the video at the end of last week. A fraction bar is exactly the same as a division symbol. It's top divided by bottom. So at any time, you're free to rewrite it. That's the exact same problem, just rewritten without the fraction bar. Okay? So all we would do is work through that top step, 23 plus -8. Good guys, bad guys. Subtract off and get 15. Leave the fraction bar for now. Work out what's on the bottom. -25 divided by 5. Again, we get to use our integer rules. The answer is 5, and a single negative always goes to the answer when you multiply or divide. And now we're ready to do that last step. 15 divided by -5 is 3, with a single negative going to the answer. All right, that's a basic review of PEMDAS type problems. Hopefully that makes sense. Email me if you guys have any questions, and ask me in the practice time tomorrow if any of these problems are something you could use more help with. I numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, so you can just say, Mr. A, help me out with number 3. I didn't get that. All right, peace out, guys.